You are small enough to fit against someone's hip. Your feet are dusty. Your hands are sticky with berry juice. No bell rings. No classroom door opens. No adult tells you to sit still and memorize the lesson. And yet, somehow, you are learning almost everything your life will depend on. For most of human history, childhood did not happen inside schools. It happened under trees, beside fires, near rivers, beside sleeping babies, sharp stones, animal tracks, and adults who were too busy surviving to become full-time teachers. So how did ancient humans raise children without classrooms, books, grades, or homework? The answer is stranger than it first sounds. They did not raise children by separating them from real life. They raised them by placing them directly inside it. In the modern world, you often imagine education as something that starts when a child is removed from the ordinary world and placed in a special building. There are desks. There are tests. There is a teacher at the front of the room. Learning becomes a scheduled activity, cut into subjects, measured by age, and judged by performance. But your ancestors lived in a world where the curriculum was hunger, weather, fire, danger, tools, stories, plants, babies, arguments, generosity, and patience. A child did not learn about life later. A child watched life happening now. What would that look like? You wake up in a camp that is already moving. Someone is repairing a net. Someone is scraping hide. Someone is nursing a baby. Someone is looking at the sky and deciding whether the clouds mean rain. A child does not need a worksheet to know these things matter. The entire world is announcing the lesson. Anthropologist David Lancy, in his work on childhood across cultures, has argued that many societies do not treat children as fragile projects to be constantly directed by adults. In many traditional communities, children are expected to observe, imitate, help a little, fail safely, and slowly become competent by being near the work of older people. That word, competent, matters. It does not mean perfect. It means useful enough, aware enough, and trusted enough to take part. In a prehistoric group, a child's first school was attention. Your eyes followed hands. How does an older child hold a digging stick? How does an ant carry fire without burning herself? How does a hunter move when he sees tracks in mud? How does a grandmother choose one route and reject another? Nobody may stop and give a lecture, but the lesson is still there. You watch, you copy, you get it wrong, you try again. Is that really education? Research on hunter-gatherer children suggests that it is. Barry Hewlett, who studied Aka communities in Central Africa, described children growing up in close physical and social contact with many caregivers. Fathers, mothers, siblings, grandparents, and other adults all take part in a child's world. This does not mean every adult is constantly teaching in the modern sense. It means children are surrounded by models. A model is a living example. A child sees how food is shared. A child hears how anger is softened. A child notices who gets listened to, who gets teased, who gets comforted, and who gets corrected. Before there is a formal lesson, there is 1,000 tiny social signals. And then there is play. Modern adults often treat play as a break from learning. Your ancestors may have lived closer to the opposite truth. For children, play was one of the main engines of learning. Imagine a group of children near camp. They have tiny bows. The arrows are not as deadly as the adult weapons. They aim at small targets. They miss. They laugh. They chase each other. One child pretends to be an animal. Another pretends to be the hunter. It looks like noise. It looks like fun. But hidden inside that game are balance, aim, patience, teamwork, courage, and the ability to read another body's movement. Peter Gray, who has written about hunter-gatherer learning, has emphasized that children in such societies often learn through self-directed play and exploration. Self-directed means the child chooses the activity. Nobody needs to turn every game into a formal lesson, because the child's own curiosity pulls them toward the skills that matter in the culture around them. If you grow up where adults gather plants, you play at gathering. If you grow up where adults hunt, you play at hunting. If you grow up where adults carry babies, you play at caring for babies. Play is not the opposite of preparation. Play is preparation disguised as joy. Now picture a little girl watching an older child carry a toddler. At first, she only stares. Then she holds a doll made from grass or hide. Then she carries a real baby for a few moments while an adult watches from nearby. One day, she becomes the older child others trust. No bell announced the lesson. No certificate marked the promotion. The community simply began to rely on her. That is how many ancient children may have learned responsibility. Not all at once, a little at a time. This is one reason human childhood is so long. Compared with many animals, human children remain dependent for years. They need food, protection, patience, and social teaching. But that long childhood is not only a weakness, it is also an opening. It gives the brain time to absorb a complicated social world. Sarah Blaffer-Hrdy, a major scholar of human evolution and caregiving, has argued that humans are shaped by cooperative breeding. Cooperative breeding means children are helped by people beyond the mother. Not only the mother, fathers, grandmothers, siblings, aunts, uncles, cousins, and unrelated group members can all become part of the child's survival system. This may be one of the deepest differences between you and many other apes. A human child is not born into one pair of hands. A human child is born into a network. In an ancient camp, your mother might be gathering, nursing another baby, resting, grieving, or injured. If children depended only on one person, many more would have died. But when caregiving is shared, a baby can be held by a sibling, fed by a grandmother, watched by an aunt, entertained by older children, and protected by the group. So raising children without schools did not mean raising them without structure. It meant the structure was social. The group was the classroom. The campfire was the lecture hall. The older children were assistant teachers. The landscape was the textbook. But ancient childhood was not soft or romantic. A child could be loved and still live near danger. A burn from the fire could scar. A mistake with water could cause sickness. A careless step near a river could kill. A hungry season did not pause because children were young. So, how did children survive that much freedom? They were free, but not invisible. Adults did not need to hover every second to influence children. In a small group, everyone is noticed. A child who wanders too far may be called back. A child who grabs too much food may be corrected with teasing, scolding, or a story. A child who hurts another child may feel the group's disapproval immediately. There is no principal's office, but there is reputation. Reputation is what people remember about how you act. In a band where everyone depends on everyone else, reputation teaches quickly. A generous child becomes trusted. A reckless child becomes watched. A selfish child becomes corrected. And because the group is small, the lesson does not disappear at the end of the school day. It follows you. Patricia Draper's work with Kung communities in southern Africa showed how children could spend much time in mixed-age groups, away from constant adult instruction, while still living close to adult life. Mixed age means younger and older children play together. That matters because younger children learn from older children, and older children practice responsibility by managing younger ones. A 7-year-old watches a 10-year-old. A 10-year-old watches a teenager. A teenager watches an adult. Learning moves down the chain. This may be one of the most important ancient systems humans ever invented. Children teaching. Children without calling it teaching. Think about what that does. A very young child does not need to understand an expert hunter. The gap is too wide. But that child can understand a slightly older child with a small bow, a smaller basket, a simpler task, and a more reachable level of skill. The older child becomes a bridge between helplessness and adulthood. That bridge may have mattered more than any classroom. Now, reconstruct a day. You are maybe 6 years old. The camp smells of smoke. Your stomach is not full yet, but it is not empty enough to panic. You follow older children toward a patch of trees. An adult knows where you are, but nobody gives you a lesson plan. You carry a tiny digging stick because you want to look like the others. At first, you dig in the wrong place. You hit stone. The older child laughs. You feel embarrassed. Then the older child points with their chin toward softer ground near a certain plant. No lecture, just a gesture. You dig again. This time the ground opens. There is a root. You pull too hard and snap it. The older child shows you how to loosen the soil first. You remember because your hands remember. Your pride remembers. Your hunger remembers. Later, back at camp, you throw a small stick at a target. You miss. You miss again. Someone older changes your grip without saying much. By sunset, you are still not good. But you are less bad than morning. That is ancient education. Slow improvement inside real life. There were also stories. Stories were not just entertainment. They were memory storage. A story can carry warnings about animals, rules about sharing, maps of water holes, jokes about arrogance, and lessons about what happens to people who ignore elders. Before writing, a story is a library that walks from mouth to mouth. Around the fire, a child learns what the group fears and what the group honors. Who was brave? Who was foolish? Who shared meat when food was scarce? Who wandered alone and never came back? A story can make danger memorable without making every child die from the lesson. That is the power of culture. Culture lets you learn from pain that was not yours. But here is the counterintuitive twist. Ancient children may not have needed schools because they were not being prepared for a world separate from childhood. They were already inside the world they needed to master. Modern school often prepares you for later. Ancient childhood prepared you through now. The child's games resembled adult work. The child's questions came from real problems. The child's social life included babies, elders, skilled adults, mistakes, hunger, weather, and death. Childhood was not sealed away from the serious world. It was the slow entrance into it. That does not mean modern schools are useless. Reading, mathematics, science, and modern medicine require kinds of knowledge no child can simply discover by wandering near a campfire. A prehistoric child could not learn antibiotics from play. A modern child cannot learn algebra just by watching clouds. But your ancient past explains something modern life often forgets. Children are built to learn by watching, moving, copying, playing, belonging, and being trusted with real responsibility. When those things disappear, learning can become thin. A child may know facts but not feel capable. A child may pass tests but not know how to help. A child may spend years being prepared for life while rarely being invited into life. Your ancestors raised children without schools by making life itself impossible to ignore. They let children see work. They let children play at danger before danger became real. They let older children guide younger ones. They let stories carry memory. They let many hands raise one small body. And slowly, the child who once fit against someone's hip became the person carrying another child through the dust. You began with dusty feet and berry-stained hands. No bell rang. No classroom opened. But the lesson was everywhere.
If you enjoy fascinating stories, history, and the hidden secrets of life, subscribe to Insert Life and turn on notifications.